The lights on Commander Zakar's control panel blinked red again. Another sector had gone silent. He moved two of his forearms across the holographic display, trying to get any response from Sector 29. Nothing. Just empty space where a thriving colony should be sending signals. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Marian outpost as well," said Officer Telvan from across the command center. His voice carried the same tired resignation that everyone felt these days. Jakar looked out the massive window of Imperial Station Nexus 7. The station hung in space like a metal giant, overlooking the core worlds of the galactic sovereignty. Once this view had filled him with pride. 1,000 years of peace and order, spreading across 47 sectors. Now all he saw was chaos. The Empire was dying. Everyone knew it, though few said it out loud. Regional governors had stopped following orders from the throne world. Some declared independence. Others formed their own small kingdoms. Pirates raided trade ships without fear because the Imperial fleet was spread too thin to stop them. Worlds that had paid taxes for centuries now kept their resources for themselves. Jakar had served the Empire for 30 years. He remembered when things worked, when supply ships arrived on time, when colonists trusted Imperial protection, when the fleet had enough ships to patrol every trade route. Those days felt like ancient history now. "Sir, we have an anomaly," called out Science Officer Miraval. She was young, barely 5 years in service. She still believed the Empire could be fixed. Jakar envied that optimism. "What kind of anomaly?" he asked, walking over to her station. "Unidentified vessel entering the Keldor system. But sir, it's not showing any transponder signal." "Pirates, then. Route it to security patrol." "No, sir, you don't understand. It's big. Capital ship-sized. Maybe bigger. And it's moving at speeds that should be impossible." That got Jakar's attention. He leaned over her console, his multiple eyes focusing on the data. The sensor readings made no sense. The vessel was moving at velocities that should tear any ship apart. No known species had engines that powerful. "Send a standard hail. All frequencies." Miraval worked her controls. After a moment, she shook her head. "No response, sir. The ship is not acknowledging our transmission. Try again. Use the old protocols, the ones from the expansion era." She tried. Still nothing. Jakar felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 30 years of service, he had never seen a vessel that didn't respond to Imperial hails. Even pirates usually sent back some kind of message, even if it was just insults. "Get me Admiral Korath," he said quietly. The Admiral appeared on the holographic display within minutes. He looked ancient because he was. Korath had served for over 200 years, back when the Empire was still expanding across the stars. His species aged slowly, and his face carried the weight of centuries. "Commander Jakar, I assume this is about the unidentified vessel? You already know about it?" "Every sensor station in 3 sectors is tracking it. The ship is heading directly toward the core worlds. It has not deviated from its course even once." Jakar pulled up the trajectory map. The Admiral was right. The mysterious vessel was flying in a perfectly straight line, aimed like an arrow at the heart of the Empire, at the throne world itself. "It's not slowing down," Miraval said, her voice shaking slightly. "Sir, at its current speed it will reach the core worlds in 3 days. All attempts at communication?" the Admiral asked. "Failed. The ship does not respond to any frequency we've tried." Korath was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that chilled everyone in the command center. "Send deep space reconnaissance drones." "I want close-up scans of that vessel. And Commander, prepare for emergency protocols. Something about this feels wrong." Over the next hour, they launched 6 drones, fast small craft designed to get close to unknown objects and send back detailed information. The drones reached the mysterious vessel and began their scans. The data that came back made no sense. "The hull material is unknown," Miraval reported, her voice rising with confusion. "It's not registering as any metal or composite in our database. The energy signatures are completely off the scale. Sir, the ship is putting out more power than a small star." "What about weapons?" Jakar asked. "I can't tell. The hull is blocking most of our scans, but there are definitely weapon ports. Thousands of them." One of the drones got close to the ship's side and focused its cameras. The image appeared on the main screen. The vessel was massive, bigger than any dreadnought in the Imperial fleet. Its surface was dark, almost black, covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and move. Then they saw the writing. Along the side of the ship, carved deep into the hull, were symbols. Ancient symbols. The translation computer began analyzing them immediately. It's processing, Miraval said. The symbols are old. Really old. Predating the Empire by thousands of years. Everyone watched the screen. The translation computer worked through its massive database of dead languages and forgotten scripts. Finally, it produced a result. The single word appeared on the screen. Humanity. The command center went silent. That's impossible, whispered Telvan. Humanity is extinct. They've been gone for 800 years. Admiral Korath's face on the holographic display had gone very still. Commander Jakar, seal this information immediately. No one outside this room is to know what we've seen. That is a direct order. Sir, what is going on? Jakar asked. I've never even heard of humanity. Why would their name be on a ship that shouldn't exist? The Admiral closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Jakar saw something he had never seen in his superior officer before. Fear. Because humanity was supposed to be our greatest success story. Korath said slowly. 800 years ago we found them. Young species. Primitive. Living on a handful of worlds in Sector 001. We offered them the standard choice. Join the Empire as vassals or face extermination. They refused? Miraval asked. They refused. So we did what we always did. We sent the fleet. We used bioweapons. Orbital bombardment. We burned their worlds until nothing remained but ash and radiation. The official records say we succeeded. Total extinction. Every human dead. But, Jakar prompted, but we never confirmed it. The final fleet sent to verify the extermination sent one last transmission. Then they went silent. The Empire quarantined the sector, declared the operation a success, and moved on. We never went back to check. The mysterious vessel continued on its path, moving toward the throne world with unwavering determination. It did not slow down. It did not change course. It just kept coming. What was in that final transmission? Jakar asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. Admiral Korath looked older than ever. They're not dying. They're adapting. Request immediate reinforcements. Then the signal cut off. Miraval pulled up the ship's trajectory again. Sir, at current speed it will reach the throne world in 68 hours. What are your orders? I need to brief the Imperial Council, Korath said. Commander, I want every ship we can spare moved into defensive positions around the core worlds. If this is what I think it is, we're going to need everything we have. What do you think it is, sir? The Admiral looked at the image of the massive vessel on the screen. The word humanity carved into its side like a promise, or a threat. Judgment, he said simply. After the Admiral signed off, Jakar stood at his station staring at the approaching ship. Around him, his crew worked frantically, trying to gather more information. But no matter what they did, the vessel remained a mystery. He thought about the Admiral's words. 800 years ago, the Empire had tried to exterminate an entire species. He had never heard about it. It was not in the history books, not taught at the military academy, just erased from the records as if it had never happened. How many other species had the Empire destroyed? How many civilizations had been wiped out and forgotten? Jakar had always believed in the Empire. He had served it faithfully, thinking he was bringing order and peace to the galaxy. Now he wondered if he had been serving something far darker. Commander, we're getting something, Miraval said suddenly. The ship is transmitting. What kind of transmission? Audio. It's using an old frequency, one we haven't used in centuries. But sir, it's speaking in a language the computer recognizes, ancient Valanthi, from before the Empire united the core worlds. Play it. The transmission crackled over the speakers. The voice was cold, mechanical, stripped of any warmth or emotion. Negotiations closed. Surrender window expired. Judgment incoming. Then silence. Jakar tried to respond, but the ship had already cut the transmission. It was not interested in talking. It had said what it came to say. Around the command center, officers looked at each other with growing fear. This was not a pirate raid, not a rebel attack. This was something the Empire had never faced before. This was something they had created. Jakar pulled up the historical database, searching for any information about humanity. Most of the files were classified or corrupted, but he found fragments, references to Sector 001, the quarantine zone, species designation, human, status, extinct. Except they were not extinct. They were coming. And they had spent 800 years preparing for this moment. The mysterious vessel continued on its unwavering course, growing closer with each passing hour. Behind it, sensors detected nothing. No fleet, no support ships, just one massive vessel, alone in the dark, heading straight for the heart of an empire that had tried to destroy it. Shakar looked at the countdown timer on his display. 67 hours until the ship reached the throne world. 67 hours to figure out how to stop something that had survived 8 centuries and crossed the galaxy seeking revenge. He had a feeling 67 hours would not be enough. Not nearly enough. The Imperial Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 12 different species shouted at each other across the massive circular room. Holographic displays showed the mysterious vessel, now designated Phantom Contact, continuing its straight path toward the throne world. Commander Jakar stood in the observer's gallery, watching the politicians argue. They had been arguing for 6 hours. The vessel would reach them in 58 hours. Time was running out and they were accomplishing nothing. "We should destroy it immediately," shouted Councillor Vectar, slamming his appendages on his console. "One ship. We have thousands. Blow it out of the sky before it gets closer. And if we fail," countered Councillor Shimar, "we don't know what weapons it has. What if attacking it provokes something worse? Worse than a hostile vessel heading for our capital? What could be worse?" Admiral Korath stood at the center of the chamber, his ancient face calm despite the chaos. "What could be worse is that we have no idea what we're facing. The ship has passed through 3 quarantine zones. It destroyed 2 automated defense platforms. There, you see. It's hostile," Vectar said. "The platforms fired warning shots first," Korath continued. "The vessel retaliated and continued on its course. It didn't slow down, didn't deviate, just destroyed the threats and kept going." Miraval stood beside Jakar in the gallery. She had not slept in 24 hours, spending all her time searching through the Imperial archives for any information about humanity. "I've found something," she whispered to Jakar, "in the restricted files. Do you want to see it?" He nodded and she pulled up a datapad. The information on it made his blood run cold. "This is from 800 years ago," she explained quietly. "First contact with species designation human. They were found in Sector 001. Population spread across 4 worlds. Technology level was primitive by our standards, but advancing quickly. The contact team reported them as curious, creative, and determined. What happened? The standard offer was made. Join the Empire as a vassal state or face extermination. The humans asked for time to consider. They were given 30 days. Jakar scanned through the report. They refused. They did more than refuse. They sent a message saying they would never be anyone's slaves, that they would rather die free than live on their knees. Miraval's voice shook slightly. The Empire took that as an insult. The next file showed the horror that followed. The Imperial fleet arrived in force. 100 warships. They started with the outlying colonies. Bioweapons that turned the atmosphere toxic. Orbital bombardment that cracked the planet's crust. The human population fought back with everything they had, but their primitive weapons could barely scratch Imperial shields. Then came the final assault on Earth, the human homeworld. The fleet bombarded it for 6 months straight. They ignited the atmosphere, boiled the oceans, turned the entire planet into a radioactive wasteland. Total estimated casualties 14 billion, Miraval read. Survival probability 0. Mission status successful. But they didn't check, Jakar said, no. The final fleet sent to confirm went silent. The sector was quarantined and abandoned. The Empire declared victory and moved on to other conquests. Down in the council chamber, Admiral Korath was explaining the same thing to the assembled politicians. Many of them looked shocked. Some species had joined the Empire willingly. Others had been conquered but treated well. None of them had known about the exterminations. "How many?" asked Councillor Shimar quietly. "How many species did we wipe out?" Korath was silent for a long moment. 47. Over the course of the Empire's expansion, 47 species refused vassalage and were exterminated. Humanity was number 47. They were also the last. After the purge, the Empire changed its policies. Conquest became more subtle, cultural assimilation instead of extermination. "Because we got scared," Vectar said. "Because we realized we were becoming monsters," Korath corrected. But it was too late. The damage was done. An alarm sounded throughout the chamber. All eyes turned to the main display. The phantom contact had just passed another boundary. It was now in the core systems. 50 hours from the throne world. It's time to stop debating, Korath said. I'm ordering the full fleet to form a defensive perimeter. We'll give the vessel one final warning. If it doesn't respond, we'll have no choice but to engage. Over the next 12 hours, the largest military fleet in Imperial history assembled. 16,000 warships from every corner of the Empire. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, cruisers. Orbital defense platforms powered up. Moon-sized fortresses activated their weapon systems. G'Kar watched from Station Nexus 7 as the Armada took position. It was impressive, terrifying. The kind of force that could conquer entire sectors. Do you think it will be enough? Miraval asked. It has to be, he said, not believing his own words. The fleet sent the final warning on every frequency, every language. Mathematical sequences, universal peace symbols. The message was simple. Stop, identify yourself, or be destroyed. For the first time, the vessel responded. The transmission came through on every screen in the fleet simultaneously. Not audio this time, video. The image appeared in front of 16,000 ships on every station, on every planet in the core systems. A human face. At least it had been human once. The figure was tall, its body more machine than flesh. Mechanical implants covered most of its visible skin. One eye glowed with an unnatural light. Half its face was metal. When it spoke, its voice carried no emotion, just cold certainty. I am Commander Zhang of the vessel Reclamation. You know who we are. You know what you did to us. In the council chamber, everyone had gone silent. The politicians stared at the screen in horror. 800 years ago, you came to our worlds, the human continued. You demanded we submit or die. We chose to die free. You tried to exterminate us. You burned our cities, poisoned our air, killed our children. 14 billion humans died in your purge. The image changed. It showed Earth as it had been. Blue oceans, green continents, cities sparkling with lights. Then it showed Earth after the purge, black, dead, a scorched ball of rock and ash. You thought you succeeded. You were wrong. Some of us survived. Thousands where there had been billions. We hid in bunkers deep underground. We fled in generation ships to the edges of the sector. We adapted. We evolved. We survived. The image changed again. This time it showed humans working in darkness, building, learning, changing themselves with technology because their bodies were too weak to survive in the wasteland you created. For 800 years we prepared. We learned from your technology, improved it, surpassed it. We became something new, something you forced us to become. Not fully human anymore, but carrying the memory of what we were, and we remembered what you did. The human's mechanical eye focused directly on the camera, as if looking at each viewer individually. You took our worlds, our children, our future. You took 14 billion lives and thought nothing of it. Just another successful purge, another species that refused to kneel, erased from existence. Around the fleet, weapon systems powered up, targeting computers locked onto the Reclamation. One word from Admiral Korath and 16,000 ships would fire everything they had. Now we have returned, Zhang said. Not to negotiate, not to surrender, not to forgive. We are here to ensure that what you did to us can never happen again, to any species ever. The transmission showed the Reclamation from the outside. The massive vessel hung in space, dark and menacing. You have 8 centuries of crimes to answer for. We are your judgment, and judgment has arrived. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The sheer weight of what they had just heard paralyzed them all. Then Admiral Korath gave the order. All ships open fire. 16,000 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Energy beams, missiles, particle cannons, plasma torpedoes. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. The Reclamation vanished in a storm of light and explosions. On Station Nexus 7, G'Kar watched the sensors. Waited for confirmation of the kill. The explosions cleared. The Reclamation was still there, undamaged, not even a scratch on its dark hull. It had taken the full force of the Imperial fleet and absorbed it like someone brushing away dust. Impossible, Miraval whispered. Then the Reclamation fired back. Not at the fleet, not at the stations or planets. It fired a single pulse of energy at specific coordinates, a military outpost called Gamma Station, in an unremarkable system near the edge of the core worlds. Population, 2 million soldiers and support staff. Get me a visual of Gamma Station, Korath ordered. The screen showed Gamma Station. It was a standard military installation. Barracks, training facilities, weapons depots, ship repair docks. Thousands of soldiers went about their daily duties, unaware of what was about to happen. The energy pulse reached the station. What happened next defied explanation. The pulse did not explode, did not destroy. Instead, everything at Gamma Station began to change. Metal structures rippled like water. Ships in the repair docks transformed before their eyes. Weapons facilities shifted and morphed. Within 10 minutes, Gamma Station was gone. In its place stood a garden. Trees grew where barracks had been. Flowers bloomed where weapons depots had stood. Meadows covered what had been landing pads. The entire military installation had been converted into nature. And the personnel? They stood among the gardens, alive and unharmed. 2 million soldiers standing in shock, surrounded by beauty where war machines had been minutes before. Another transmission from the reclamation. Commander Zhang appeared on screen again. We could have killed them. We chose not to. This is what you took from us. The choice between life and death. For 800 years, you denied us that choice. Now we deny it to you. Your weapons are forfeit. Your capacity to make war is over. But your judgment? That has only begun. The transmission ended again. In the council chamber, Councillor Shaimar stood on shaking legs. They have the power to destroy us completely. But they're not using it. Yet, Vector added. They're making a point first. Miraval was studying the sensor data from Gamma Station. Commander, look at this. The transformation wasn't just physical. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of military technology has been molecularly restructured. Nanotechnology on a scale we've never seen. This isn't just advanced technology. This is something else entirely. She pulled up deeper scans. Sir, the reclamation isn't just one ship. It's a carrier. Sensors show it contains millions, possibly billions of smaller vessels, each one capable of what we just witnessed. Jakar understood then what they were facing. Not a warship. Not an invasion fleet. An entire civilization compressed into a single massive vessel. A civilization that had spent 800 years perfecting the art of survival and revenge. They're not here to conquer us, he said quietly. They're here to make sure we can never conquer anyone else again. Admiral Korath appeared on the command display, his ancient face grave. The reclamation is moving again. Same course, same speed, heading straight for the throne world. Do we fire again? Asked one of the fleet commanders. No, Korath said. We've already proven we can't hurt it. Now we need to understand what it wants. The reclamation continued its journey. The Imperial fleet followed at a distance, weapons ready but not firing. Everyone watched and waited. 7 hours later, the vessel arrived at the throne world. It took up position directly above the Imperial palace. No weapons charging, no threats. Just hovering there in orbit, waiting. Then one final transmission arrived. Commander Zhang's face appeared again on every screen across the Empire. You have 7 days to evacuate the Imperial Palace. We are reclaiming it. Not for ourselves. For those you destroyed. All 47 species you exterminated. Every civilization you erased. The palace will become a memorial, a reminder of the cost of empire. The image changed to show the palace from orbit. The massive structure had stood for 1,000 years, symbol of imperial power and authority. 7 days, Zhang repeated. Then the transformation begins. Consider this mercy. We remember what it feels like to have no choice. We are giving you one. The transmission ended for the last time. In the council chamber, the politicians looked at each other with growing horror. The empire had fallen without a single ship being destroyed, without a single world being conquered. Humanity had accomplished with fear and technology what 1,000 rebellions had failed to do. They had broken the Galactic sovereignty's will to fight, and they had done it in less than 3 days. The 7 days passed like a nightmare. The reclamation hung above the throne world, silent and ominous. The Imperial Palace had been evacuated. Thousands of years of records, artifacts, and treasures removed to safe locations across the core worlds. Now it stood empty, waiting. Commander Jakar had not slept in 4 days. He stood at his station on Nexus 7, watching the timer count down. 3 hours until the human deadline expired. The entire galaxy watched with him. Any word from the council? He asked Miraval. She shook her head. They've been in emergency session for 2 days straight. Half of them want to surrender completely. The others want to evacuate the core worlds and regroup elsewhere. Nobody knows what to do. Because there's nothing we can do, Jakar said quietly. We spent 1,000 years building an empire on fear and military might. Now someone has more of both, and we're helpless. The timer reached 0. The reclamation began to descend. Not the entire ship, that would have been impossible. Instead, a smaller craft detached from the massive vessel and headed down to the surface. It was still large, the size of a small cruiser, but compared to its parent ship, it looked tiny. Every sensor on the planet tracked it. The craft landed in the central courtyard of the Imperial Palace, right in front of the throne room. A ramp extended from its side. What emerged was not an army. Not soldiers or weapons or war machines. Instead, humans walked out. Hundreds of them. Most looked like Commander Zhang. More machine than flesh. But among them were others who looked almost normal. Almost human, if humans could still be called fully human after 8 centuries of forced evolution. They carried tools, construction equipment, scanning devices. They moved with purpose and efficiency, spreading throughout the palace like a well-organized work crew. The lead figure approached the throne room. The doors had been left open during the evacuation. The human stepped inside, and every camera in the room transmitted what happened next across the empire. The throne itself stood at the far end of the massive chamber. 300 meters of polished floor led to the raised platform where the emperor had once sat. The throne was carved from a single piece of crystal taken from a planet in Sector 12. It had taken 100 artisans 50 years to complete. It was priceless. It was beautiful. It was also a symbol of oppression. The human walked up to it without hesitation, pulled out a scanning device, began taking measurements. Other humans entered the chamber behind him carrying equipment. They're dismantling it, Miraval said, watching the feed in disbelief. They're taking the throne apart piece by piece, she was right. The humans worked with careful precision, removing sections of the crystal throne and packing them into protective containers. They treated it with respect, but also with the cold efficiency of people doing an important job. A transmission came through, not to the council, not to the military, directly to Station Nexus 7. Specifically requesting Commander Zakar. This is Commander Zhang of the Reclamation. Commander Zakar, we would like to speak with you, face to face. Everyone in the command center turned to look at him. Zakar felt his forearms tense. Why me? Because you are the one who discovered our vessel. Because you have been searching for truth in the archives. Because Admiral Korath recommended you as someone who might understand what we are trying to do. The Admiral had recommended him. Zakar looked at the screen showing Zhang's mechanical face. What if I refuse? Then we will continue our work without you. But we believe this conversation is necessary. For both of us, Zakar made his decision. I'll come. But I'm bringing Science Officer Miraval with me. Acceptable. A shuttle will be permitted to land. Come unarmed. 2 hours later, Zakar and Miraval stood on the surface of the throne world. Walking through the palace they had both visited many times before, but now it felt different, emptier. The humans worked all around them, carefully cataloging and removing centuries of imperial history. They were led to a chamber that had once been used for diplomatic meetings. Commander Zhang waited for them there, along with several other humans. Some were fully mechanical like him. Others retained more of their original biology. One of them was ancient. A small woman with white hair and skin marked by age. She wore simple clothes, but she carried herself with quiet authority. Unlike the others, she had no visible mechanical enhancements. Commander Zakar, Science Officer Miraval. Thank you for coming, Zhang said. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. She is one of the survivors. The old woman nodded slightly. One of the last pure genetic humans left. I was born on Earth before the Purge. I was 23 years old when your fleet arrived. I'm 841 years old now. Technology keeps me alive, but it cannot erase my memories. Zakar felt something twist in his chest. This woman had lived through the destruction of her entire civilization. Had survived 800 years carrying that trauma. Why did you ask us here? He asked. Because before we continue, we want you to understand, Dr. Chen said. Not just know, but truly understand what was done. What your empire was. She gestured to a holographic display. It activated, showing Earth as it had been. Beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents dotted with cities that glowed at night. 14 billion people lived there. Dr. Chen said softly. Artists, scientists, farmers, teachers, children dreaming of the stars. We were young as civilizations go. We had just reached our own moon. Just sent our first probes to neighboring planets. We were so excited when we detected your scout ship. The image changed. Showed the first contact. Human diplomats meeting imperial officers. Everyone smiling, hopeful. We thought we had found friends among the stars. Dr. Chen continued. Instead, we found an ultimatum. Submit or die. We asked for time to consider. We debated for weeks. Some wanted to accept. They said survival was more important than pride. But others, myself included, said that life without freedom was no life at all. Miraval spoke quietly. You refused. We did. We sent a message to your empire. We said that humanity would never kneel. That we would rather burn than become slaves. We thought you might respect that. That you might at least try to find a peaceful solution. The holographic images showed what happened instead. Imperial warships arriving. The first attacks, cities burning, humans fighting back desperately with primitive weapons. You did not try to find peace, Dr. Chen said, her ancient voice hardening. You came to destroy us completely, totally. You used weapons that turned our atmosphere toxic, bombed our cities until nothing remained but rubble. When some of us fled underground, you sent seismic charges to collapse the bunkers. The images were horrific. Shakar wanted to look away but forced himself to watch. This was truth. This was what his empire had done. 14 billion people died, Dr. Chen repeated. My parents, my siblings, my friends, my colleagues, everyone I had ever known. Gone in 6 months of systematic extermination. How did you survive? Miraval asked. Commander Zhang answered. Thousands of us made it to deep bunkers that your weapons did not reach. Others escaped on generation ships we launched in the final days. We scattered to the edges of the sector. We lived in darkness, in caves, on dead moons, anywhere we could hide. Dr. Chen continued the story. We had no choice but to adapt. The few habitable places we found were toxic, irradiated, hostile. Human bodies were not designed for those conditions. So we changed ourselves. Genetic modifications, cybernetic enhancements. We merged with our technology because it was the only way to survive. You stopped being human, Shakar said. We became something new, Zhang corrected. Post-human, transhuman, whatever you want to call it. But we kept our memories. We passed down the stories of Earth, of what we had been, what was taken from us. And we made a promise to the 14 billion dead. What promise? Miraval asked. Dr. Chen's eyes, still purely human despite her age, locked onto theirs. That their deaths would mean something. That no other species would suffer what we suffered. That the galactic sovereignty would never be allowed to exterminate another civilization. The holographic display changed again. This time it showed humanity's 800-year journey. Living in hiding. Building in secret. Learning. Advancing. Creating technology that surpassed everything the Empire had. We studied you, Zhang said. For centuries. We intercepted your transmissions, hacked your databases, learned everything about your civilization, your technology, your military, your weaknesses. And you planned your revenge, Shakar said. We planned justice, Dr. Chen corrected firmly. Revenge would have been easy. We could have built weapons to destroy your worlds just as you destroyed ours. We could have wiped out trillions in retaliation for our billions. But that would have made us just like you. That would have meant you won. That you had successfully turned us into monsters. Then what do you want? Shakar asked. Commander Zhang stood. We want the galactic sovereignty to end. Not the people, not the worlds, just the Empire itself. The military machine that has spent 1,000 years conquering and oppressing. You're dismantling our weapons, Miraval said, understanding dawning in her eyes. All of them, Zhang confirmed. While the reclamation distracted you here, millions of our smaller vessels have been systematically executing our plan across all 47 sectors. Weapons foundries are becoming gardens. Planetary defense networks are now solar farms. Military academies are being converted to hospitals and schools. He pulled up a display showing real-time footage from across the Empire. Everywhere, human ships were peacefully neutralizing military installations. Not destroying them, transforming them. The molecular restructuring technology they had used on Gamma Station was being deployed on a galactic scale. This is impossible, Shakar said. You're talking about millions of installations. billions of weapons systems. We have been preparing for 800 years, Dr. Chen said simply. We built enough ships, enough technology, enough capacity to do this all at once before you could organize a response. Miraval was studying the data. You're not just targeting military assets. You're also broadcasting something, information, documents. Zhang nodded. The truth. Everything the Empire has hidden. Every exterminated species, every war crime, every covered-up atrocity. We are releasing all of it to every world in the Empire simultaneously. No more secrets. No more lies. Jakar felt dizzy. The Empire was not just losing its military power. It was losing its legitimacy, its moral authority, its ability to control the narrative of history. Why are you telling us this, he asked. Because you need to understand what comes next, Dr. Chen said. In a few days, the Empire will effectively cease to exist as a military power. You will still have your worlds, your people, your cultures, but you will not have the capacity to make war on the scale you once did. And then? Miraval asked. And then you have a choice, Zhang said. You can accept what has happened. Work with us to build something better. Help us create a galaxy where species are not forced to choose between submission and extinction. Or you can refuse. Try to rebuild your weapons. Attempt to restore the old order. What happens if we refuse? Jakar asked. Dr. Chen's voice was cold. Then we quarantine you. All of you. We place humanity as a permanent barrier between the former empire and the rest of the galaxy. We let you tear yourselves apart fighting over the scraps of what you once were. We do not destroy you. We simply ensure you can never threaten anyone else again. The room was silent for a long moment. Jakar thought about everything he had learned. Everything he had believed about the Empire was a lie. The peace it had brought was built on the bones of 47 exterminated civilizations. The order it had maintained was enforced by the threat of total destruction. Admiral Koreth was part of the Purge, Jakar said suddenly. He told me. He was there when Earth burned. We know, Zhang said. We have known the identity of every officer involved in the genocide. We have been watching them for centuries. Then why haven't you killed them? Dr. Chen stood slowly, moving to look out a window at the city beyond. Because we needed them to live, to carry the weight of what they did, to see the consequences of their actions. Death would have been too easy, too quick. We wanted them to spend their lives knowing what they had done, wondering when judgment would come. She turned back to face them. But more than that, we needed witnesses. People who could confirm our story, who could not deny what happened because they were there. Admiral Koreth has been carrying guilt for 800 years. That guilt is part of our justice. This is cruel, Miraval said quietly. Is it crueler than exterminating 14 billion people? Zhang asked. Is it crueler than 800 years of hiding in darkness? Changing ourselves into something we never wanted to be just to survive? We are not asking for your approval. We are telling you what is happening and what will happen next. Jakar looked at these humans, these post-humans, these beings who had every reason to hate, to destroy, to take the same path the Empire had taken. But instead they had chosen something harder, something that required more strength than simple revenge. What do you need from us, he asked. Honesty, Dr. Chen said. Truth. Help us show the galaxy what the Empire really was. Help us build something better in its place. Not for us, not for you, for everyone who comes after. So that 800 years from now, no species has to do what we did. No civilization has to change themselves into weapons just to survive. Outside the windows, human workers continued dismantling the palace, piece by piece, artifact by artifact, recording everything, preserving it not as a celebration of imperial glory but as a warning about the cost of empire. I'll help, Jakar said. I don't know if I can convince others, but I'll tell the truth. Miraval nodded. So will I. Dr. Chen smiled for the first time since they had met. It was a sad smile, carrying 8 centuries of pain, but it was genuine. Then there is hope, she said. Not for the Empire. That must end. But for what comes after. For a galaxy that learns from its mistakes instead of repeating them. Commander Zhang walked them back to their shuttle. As they left, Jakar looked back at the reclamation hanging in orbit above the throne world. A single massive ship carrying the survivors of a genocide, carrying 800 years of history and pain and determination. They had come not to conquer but to teach, not to destroy but to transform. Not to replace one empire with another, but to make sure no empire could ever do what had been done to them. It was the most human thing Jakar had ever witnessed, and the most frightening, because it proved that even after everything, even after being pushed to the edge of extinction, even after being forced to become something they never wanted to be, humanity had not lost the thing that made them truly dangerous. They had not lost their capacity for mercy, and mercy, Jakar realized, was far more terrifying than revenge could ever be. 3 months had passed since the reclamation arrived at the throne world. The galactic sovereignty no longer existed in any meaningful sense. Regional governors had declared independence across all 47 sectors. Trade networks had collapsed. The Imperial fleet had fractured, with some ships joining local defense forces and others simply disappearing into deep space. Commander Jakar stood in what used to be the Imperial Palace throne room. It looked nothing like it had before. The walls were covered with names. Billions of names carved into every surface. Human names from Earth. Names from the other 46 species the Empire had exterminated. A memorial to the forgotten dead. "It's almost complete," said Commander Zhang, walking up beside him. "Another week and the transformation will be finished. This will become the Museum of Extinction, a place where anyone can come to learn what happens when power is not balanced by empathy." Jakar ran one of his hands along the wall, tracing the carved letters. "How did you get all these names?" "The records were destroyed centuries ago. We rebuilt them, used genetic databases, archaeological evidence, damaged records we recovered from Imperial archives. It took centuries of work. We wanted every person who died to be remembered, not just as numbers, as individuals with names and lives and dreams." Miraval entered the chamber carrying a data pad. She had been promoted to Chief Historical Officer, working directly with the humans to document the truth about the Empire's past. The work had aged her. She looked exhausted. "The Council wants to meet with you," she told Jakar. "Both of you." "Which council?" Jakar asked. "There are about 50 different groups calling themselves governments now. The Coalition. Representatives from 300 worlds. They're trying to organize some kind of unified response to everything that's happened." Zhang nodded. "I'll inform Dr. Chen. This is what we've been waiting for." The meeting took place on Nexus 7, one of the few neutral locations that still functioned. The station's command center had been converted into a conference facility. Representatives from 300 worlds crowded into the space, some appearing holographically because they could not or would not travel. Jakar recognized many faces: former Imperial officers, regional governors, species representatives from a dozen different civilizations. They all looked angry, frightened, confused, or some combination of all three. Admiral Korath sat near the front. He had resigned from military service and now worked as an unofficial advisor to anyone who would listen. His ancient face looked even older now, weathered by guilt and the weight of witnessing the Empire's collapse. Dr. Sarah Chen entered the chamber, flanked by Commander Zhang and a small group of other humans. The room fell silent. Despite her small stature and obvious age, Chen commanded attention simply by being there. This was the woman who had survived the Purge, who had led humanity's 800-year journey from extinction to resurrection. "Thank you for meeting with us," Chen said, her voice calm but carrying clearly through the chamber. "I know many of you are angry. Many of you feel betrayed. You believed in the Empire, served it faithfully, and now that Empire is gone. You destroyed it," shouted a Valanthi representative. "You came here and dismantled everything we built. Our weapons, our defenses. You've left us vulnerable to pirates and warlords. We removed your capacity to wage war on the scale you once did," Chen corrected. "But we have not left you defenseless. Every system that requested protection has been given defensive technology. Shields, point defense systems. Enough to protect your worlds from raiders and criminals. What you no longer have is the ability to conquer other species. And what gives you the right to make that decision?" demanded another representative. Zhang stepped forward. "The right of survivors. The right of those who have seen what your empire's military power was used for. You ask what gives us the right. 14 billion dead on Earth alone. The complete extinction of 46 other civilizations. That gives us the right." "Those were decisions made centuries ago," protested a Kryn diplomat. "We were not responsible for those actions. Why should we be punished?" Dr. Chen's expression hardened. "You were not responsible for the exterminations, but you benefited from them. Your worlds thrived under imperial protection. Your people enjoyed peace and prosperity built on the bones of the dead. You did not commit the crime, but you enjoyed the profits. She pulled up a holographic display showing data from across the former empire. Over the past 3 months, we have been releasing documents, historical records, evidence of 47 extinctions spanning 1,000 years. We have shown the galaxy the truth about what the sovereignty did. The display showed reactions from across known space, protests, riots, some worlds celebrating the empire's fall, others mourning it. Everywhere, people struggling to understand what they had been part of. Many of you are frightened, Chen continued. You see your weapons gone and your security shattered. You fear that without the empire, chaos will consume you. You fear that humanity has simply replaced one tyranny with another, haven't you? Asked Admiral Korith quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. You have the power, the technology, the capacity to control the galaxy just as the empire did. How do we know you won't become the next sovereignty? It was the question everyone wanted to ask but feared to voice. Chen looked at Korith for a long moment and something passed between them. Survivor and perpetrator, victim and soldier. Two people carrying the weight of the same historical crime from opposite sides. Because we are leaving, Chen said simply. The chamber erupted in confusion. Dozens of voices shouting questions. Shang raised his hand for silence. We did not come here to rule you, he explained. We came to ensure you could not do to others what was done to us. That task is nearly complete. Once the Museum of Extinction is finished, once the final weapons facilities have been converted, once defensive systems are in place for those who want them, we will depart. To where? Asked Miraval. Home, Chen said softly. Back to Earth, we're going to terraform it. Restore what was destroyed. It will take centuries, perhaps a millennium, but we're going to bring our homeworld back to life. And leave us? The Valanthi representative asked. Leave us to tear ourselves apart? That is your choice, Chen said. You can tear yourselves apart fighting over the remains of the Empire, or you can work together to build something better. We are giving you the opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. Zhang pulled up another display. We have prepared a proposal, not a demand, not an ultimatum, a suggestion for how you might organize yourselves going forward. Study it, debate it, change it, reject it entirely if you wish, but understand that if you attempt to rebuild your weapons, if you try to recreate the military power you once had, we will return. And next time we will not be so gentle. The proposal appeared on everyone's screens. Shakar read through it quickly. It outlined a federation structure, voluntary membership, shared technology and resources, open trade, cultural exchange, democratic decision-making, and one universal law. No species would be allowed to exterminate another. Any attempt would be met with united response. This is impossible, said one representative. We have hundreds of different species, different needs, different cultures. How could we possibly govern ourselves together? The same way humanity governed itself before the Purge? Chen said. With difficulty, with compromise, with patience. Democracy is messy, freedom is complicated, but tyranny is worse, much worse, we know. We paid the price for refusing to accept it. Admiral Korith stood slowly. I need to say something. The room quieted. I was there. On Earth during the Purge. I was a junior officer on a destroyer. I followed orders. I fired on civilian targets because my commanders told me it was necessary. I watched cities burn and told myself it was justice. His voice cracked slightly. I have lived for 800 years carrying that guilt. Watching the empire grow, seeing it commit smaller atrocities in the name of peace and order, knowing that I was part of the foundation it was built on. When the reclamation arrived, part of me felt relief. Finally, someone was holding us accountable. He looked at Dr. Chen. I cannot ask for forgiveness. What we did is unforgivable, but I can offer something else. My knowledge, my experience, my remaining years spent helping to ensure it never happens again. If you will allow it, Chen studied the ancient admiral. We have compiled a list of everyone involved in the Purge. 7,000 officers and crew. Most are dead. Some, like you, are still alive. We have watched you all for centuries, waiting to see if any of you would acknowledge what you did. You are the first. She paused. We do not forgive you, but we accept your offer. Your knowledge of how the Empire functioned will be valuable in making sure nothing like it can rise again. Over the next weeks, the coalition debated, argued, nearly fell apart a dozen times. But slowly, grudgingly, they began to work together. Not because they liked each other, not because they trusted each other, but because they had no choice. The alternative was chaos or submission to a military power that no longer existed. G'Kar found himself working as a mediator between different factions. His experience in the imperial military gave him credibility with some groups. His willingness to acknowledge the Empire's crimes gave him credibility with others. Miraval continued documenting everything, creating a historical record that could not be erased or distorted. She interviewed survivors of imperial conquest, collected testimonies from species that had been vassalized, built a database of crimes that could never be forgotten. 6 months after the Reclamation's arrival, the first convention was held. Representatives from 1,800 worlds gathered to sign what they called the Commonwealth Accord. It was not perfect. It left many questions unanswered. But it was a start. The terms were simple. No central military authority. No enforced laws except one: the protection of species survival. Shared scientific research. Open trade networks. Voluntary cooperation. Democratic decision-making with 1 vote per world, regardless of size or power. Dr. Chen attended the signing ceremony but did not participate. Humanity had no vote, no voice in the new government. They had done what they came to do. Why not join us? G'Kar asked her afterward. You have earned the right to be part of this. We have earned the right to go home, Chen said. To rebuild what was taken from us. To see if we can become human again, or if 800 years of adaptation has changed us too permanently. Besides, the Commonwealth needs to succeed or fail on its own merits. If humanity is part of it, we become either a crutch or a target. Commander Zhang appeared with a final report. The last weapons facility has been converted. All defensive systems are online. The Museum of Extinction is complete and open to visitors. Our task here is finished. Chen nodded. Prepare for departure. The Reclamation began to leave 3 days later. G'Kar and Miraval were among the thousands who gathered to watch it go. The massive vessel rose from its position above the throne world, accelerating toward the edge of the system. Before it left, one final transmission came through. Dr. Chen's face appeared on screens across the Commonwealth. To those who will build the future, she said, remember the past. Remember what happens when power is not checked by compassion, when order is valued above freedom, when empire is chosen over cooperation. The Museum of Extinction stands as a memorial. Visit it, learn from it, and never ever forget what it represents. Her image was replaced by a view of Earth, not as it was now, dead and scorched, but as it had been, blue and green and beautiful. This is what you took from us. This is what we are going to rebuild, not through conquest, not through forcing others to help us, but through our own effort and determination, because that is what you could not destroy, our capacity to hope, to dream, to work toward a better future even when that future seems impossible. The transmission ended. The Reclamation vanished into faster-than-light travel, heading back toward Sector 001, back toward Earth. G'Kar stood watching the empty space where it had been. Beside him, Miraval was crying quietly. Do you think they'll succeed? She asked. Do you think they can really bring Earth back? I think they'll try, G'Kar said. And if there's one thing we've learned about humanity, it's that when they try something, they don't give up easily. And us? Do you think the Commonwealth will work? G'Kar thought about that. About the thousands of worlds trying to work together without the force of empire holding them in place. About the challenges ahead, the conflicts that would arise, the mistakes that would be made. I don't know, he admitted. But for the first time in my life, I think we have a chance to do something right. Not perfect, not easy, but right. Miraval wiped her eyes. I'm going to visit the museum tomorrow. I've been avoiding it, but I think I need to see it. Need to understand fully what the Empire did. I'll go with you, G'Kar said. They went together the next day. Walked through halls carved with billions of names. Looked at exhibits showing the civilizations that had been destroyed. Read testimonies from survivors and victims. Saw preserved artifacts from 47 dead cultures. It took them 8 hours to go through the entire museum. When they emerged, both felt changed. Smaller, humbled by the weight of history and the cost of the empire they had served. We can never make this right, Miraval said. No, G'Kar agreed, but we can make sure it never happens again. That's what Chen meant. That's the real judgment, not revenge. Not punishment, but responsibility. We have to carry this forward. Make sure everyone knows. Make sure no one forgets. Above them, stars shone in the night sky. Among them, somewhere far away, humanity traveled home, carrying their own memories, their own pain, their own hope for a future where they could finally rest. And across the Commonwealth, 1,000 worlds tried to figure out how to live together without someone forcing them to. It was messy. It was difficult. It was frightening. But it was also free. And freedom, they were learning, was worth the struggle. 20 years had passed since the reclamation departed. Commander Jakar was no longer a military officer. That title meant nothing in the Commonwealth, where no central military existed. Instead, he had become what people called a truth speaker. Someone who traveled between worlds teaching history, ensuring the lessons of the past were not forgotten. He stood now on the observation deck of a civilian transport, watching as Earth came into view. The human homeworld, the place where everything had begun. He had been invited by the humans themselves, along with 200 other representatives from across the Commonwealth. A special occasion, a milestone. Miraval stood beside him. She had aged well, her scales dulling to a distinguished gray. She was now the head of the historical archives, custodian of the Commonwealth's memory. "I never thought I'd see it," she said quietly, looking at the planet below. Earth was still mostly dead. The continents were brown and gray, scarred by centuries of bombardment. The oceans were dark, slowly being cleaned of radiation and toxins. But here and there, patches of green had begun to appear. Small at first, then spreading. Life returning to a world that had been murdered. 20 years of terraforming, Jakar said. Dr. Chen said it would take centuries. "It will," said a familiar voice behind them. They turned to see Commander Zhang. He looked the same as he had 2 decades ago, his mechanical body unchanged by time. "What you see now is just the beginning, but it is a beginning. That's what we wanted you to witness." The transport descended toward the surface. They landed near what had once been called the Pacific Ocean. A temporary settlement had been built here, home to 50,000 humans working on the restoration project. Beyond it, visible in the distance, was a forest. Dr. Sarah Chen met them at the landing platform. She looked frailer than Jakar remembered, leaning on a support staff. But her eyes were still sharp, still carrying the weight of 8 centuries. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting us," Miraval replied. "We brought something for you." She gestured to several other delegates who carried sealed containers. Seeds from 300 different worlds. Trees, flowers, grasses, species that might adapt to Earth's recovering ecosystem. Chen's eyes glistened. "That is a generous gift. We accept it gratefully." Over the next 3 days, the delegates toured the restoration sites. They saw massive atmospheric processors cleaning the air, saw oceans being filtered and replenished, saw the first forests growing from soil that had been lifeless for 800 years. But the most important stop was the memorial. It stood where the city of Beijing had once been, a massive structure of crystal and metal reaching toward the sky. Inside, the names of the 14 billion dead were carved into every surface. Not just humans. Every species the Empire had exterminated. 47 civilizations remembered in one place. "We brought the names from the Museum of Extinction," Zhang explained as they walked through the memorial. "We wanted them here, on Earth, so that as we rebuild our world, we never forget the others who never got that chance." Jakar stopped in front of one section. The names were from the Keltari people, the 32nd species exterminated by the Empire. He had learned about them during his years as a truth speaker, a peaceful civilization of artists and philosophers. They had refused vassalage because they valued creative freedom above security. The Empire had burned their 3 worlds in a month. "I taught their history to schoolchildren on Volantis Prime last year," he said. Most had never heard of them. But now they know. Now they remember. "That is the real victory," Chen said. "Not revenge. Not even justice. But memory. Making sure the dead are not forgotten. That their lives meant something." That evening, all 200 delegates gathered in an amphitheater built into a hillside overlooking the new forest. Chen stood before them, looking small and ancient but somehow still powerful. "We asked you here for a specific reason," she began. "In 6 months, the first children will be born on Earth in 800 years. Pure genetic humans conceived naturally, carrying no modifications or enhancements. The first generation of humanity that will grow up on a living world instead of hiding in bunkers or living on dead moons. She paused, letting that sink in. We wanted you to see what we are building. Not to make you feel guilty. Not to remind you of crimes. But to show you what recovery looks like. What healing looks like. It is slow, it is difficult, but it is possible. A young Valanthi delegate stood. Dr. Chen, I was born after the reclamation came. I never served the Empire, but I still feel the weight of what my species did. What can I do?
How can I help?
Chen smiled gently. Live well. Build something good. Teach others. The guilt you feel is natural, but do not let it paralyze you. Use it as motivation to make sure your generation does better than those who came before. Over the next few weeks, news from the Commonwealth filtered in. The organization was still struggling. Some worlds had withdrawn, preferring isolation. Others had formed smaller alliances within the larger structure. There had been conflicts, some turning violent. Pirates still raided trade routes. Criminal syndicates still operated, but there had been no wars, no genocides, no attempts to rebuild the kind of military power the Empire had wielded. The Commonwealth was messy and imperfect, but it was working. Barely, but working. Jakar received a message from Admiral Koreth. The ancient officer had finally died peacefully, surrounded by students he had been teaching about military ethics and the dangers of blindly following orders. His final words, recorded and distributed widely, were simple. Question authority. Remember history. Choose compassion over obedience. The message made Jakar sad. Koreth had spent his final decades trying to atone for crimes that could never be forgiven. It was not redemption, but it was something. A recognition that the person you were yesterday did not have to define the person you could be tomorrow. On the last day of their visit, Dr. Chen took Jakar and Miraval to see something special. They traveled in a small ground vehicle to the edge of the new forest. There, in a clearing, stood a single structure. It was a school. Small, simple, built from earth wood grown in the new forests. This will be the first school for the children who will be born here, Chen explained. We have been debating what to teach them. Our history, certainly. The sciences and arts, but also something else. She led them inside. The walls were covered with images, not just of Earth, but of worlds across the galaxy. Volantis, Kryn, Osea, hundreds of different species and cultures. We want our children to grow up knowing they are part of something larger, Chen said. That Earth is one world among thousands. That humanity is one species among many. We want them to understand what was lost, but also what was saved. What could be built if we choose cooperation over conquest? Miraval looked at the images with tears in her eyes. You're teaching them about us. About all of us, of course, Chen said. You are part of our story now, just as we are part of yours. The Empire tried to destroy us, and in surviving, we destroyed the Empire. But from those ruins, we are building something new, together. That night, the delegates gathered for a final ceremony. They stood in the new forest under Earth's stars. Chen, now barely able to stand even with support, addressed them one last time. When the reclamation came to your worlds, we came in anger and pain and determination. We came seeking justice for crimes you did not commit but benefited from. We dismantled your weapons and shattered your empire. Many of you still resent us for that. Many of you still see us as the enemy. She paused, gathering strength. But we did not come to be your rulers. We came to be your conscience, your reminder, your warning. And now, 20 years later, we can finally say this: we forgive you. The clearing went silent. No one had expected those words. Not for the purge, Chen clarified. That can never be forgiven. Those who died deserve better than forgiveness granted on their behalf. But we forgive you for what came after, for the confusion, for the resentment, for struggling with the new reality we forced upon you. We forgive you for being imperfect as you try to build something better. She looked around at all the assembled delegates. Because we understand now what we did not understand 800 years ago. Civilization is fragile. Society is hard. Building something good requires constant effort from imperfect beings doing their best. You are doing your best. It is not perfect, but it is honest. And that is enough. Commander Zhang stepped forward. Dr. Chen is dying. Her body is finally giving out after 8 centuries. She wanted to make this speech herself, to say these words while she still could. When she passes, I will become the new leader of the survivors, and I promise to continue her work, to help humanity heal, to help Earth recover, and to remain friends with the Commonwealth if you will have us." Shakar found himself stepping forward. "We will. Humanity has earned that right, not through force, not through power, but through the example you have set. You had every reason to destroy us. Instead, you saved us from ourselves. That is something we will never forget." Other delegates stepped forward, offering similar sentiments. Not all of them. Some still harbored resentment. Some still feared humanity's power. But enough stepped forward to matter. Enough to show that something new was growing from the ashes of empire. Dr. Sarah Chen died 3 weeks later. The last pure genetic human who had lived through the purge. Her death was mourned across the galaxy. Even on worlds that had never forgiven humanity for dismantling the empire, people recognized what had been lost. The passing of an era. The end of living memory of the greatest crime the galaxy had ever witnessed. Her funeral was attended by representatives from every world in the Commonwealth. She was buried on Earth in the New Forest, under a tree grown from a seed that had survived the purge in a bunker vault. The tree had been 300 years old when Earth burned, had survived underground, and now grew again in clean air and living soil. It seemed fitting. 50 years after the Reclamation's arrival, Shakar returned to Earth one final time. He was old now, near the end of his own life. Miraval had died 10 years earlier, peacefully, surrounded by the historical archives she had spent decades building. Earth had changed dramatically. 40% of the planet was now green. Forests covered entire continents. Oceans teemed with life. Species brought from other worlds mixing with remnants of Earth's original ecosystem that had somehow survived. Cities were being built again, but different from before. Integrated with nature instead of dominating it. And children. Human children. 50,000 of them now. Running and playing in the forests their ancestors had dreamed of restoring. They were fully human. No mechanical enhancements, no genetic modifications. Just children being children on a world that was alive again. Shakar visited the memorial one last time. Stood in front of the wall of names. 14 billion humans. Trillions of beings from 46 other species. All dead, all remembered. "We did not save you," he said quietly to the names. "We cannot bring you back. But we learned from your deaths. We built something better because you paid the price. I hope that matters. I hope your deaths meant something." A young human girl, perhaps 10 years old, approached him. "Are you Commander Shakar?" "The truth speaker." "I was. Long ago. I read about you in school. You helped stop the Empire from coming back. You taught people about what happened." "Thank you." Shakar looked at this child. She would grow up on a living world. Would never know the fear of hiding in bunkers or fleeing in generation ships. Would learn about the purge as history, not as living trauma. "You are welcome," he said. "But the real thanks goes to your ancestors. They survived when they should have died. They chose mercy when they had every reason to choose revenge. They are the heroes. I just helped clean up the mess." The girl smiled and ran off to join her friends. Shakar watched them play among the trees. So full of life. So full of hope. So unburdened by the weight of history that had crushed previous generations. Maybe that was the real victory. Not that the guilty were punished or the dead avenged, but that eventually life could begin again. Children could play without fear. People could hope without that hope being crushed. He left Earth the next day, returned to the Commonwealth, to the dozens of worlds he still visited as a truth speaker. Everywhere he went, he told the story. Not just of the purge, not just of the Empire's fall, but of what came after, of the choice humanity made, of the recovery that was still ongoing, of the possibility of redemption, not for crimes but for futures. Shakar died 2 years later. His final words, recorded for the archives, were simple. "I served an empire built on fear and death. I lived to see it replaced by something built on memory and hope. That is more than I deserved, more than any of us deserved. But humanity gave us that chance anyway. May we never waste it." 100 years after the Reclamation's arrival, Earth was fully restored. 7 continents covered in forests, grasslands, tundra, and desert. Oceans full of life. An atmosphere clean and breathable. A population of 10 million humans spread across sustainable cities designed to exist in harmony with nature. The memorial of extinction remained unchanged. A permanent reminder of what had been lost and what the cost of empire truly was. The Commonwealth had grown stronger. 3,000 worlds now participated. Democratic structures had solidified. Trade flourished. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. There had been conflicts, certainly. Arguments and disagreements and even a few small wars between individual worlds. But nothing on the scale of the old empire. Nothing that threatened entire civilizations. And whenever tensions rose too high, representatives would visit the memorial, would walk among the names of the dead, would remember what happened when power was not checked by compassion. Humanity had finally achieved what Dr. Chen had dreamed of. They had gone home. They had healed. They had become fully human again, though they retained the knowledge of how to modify themselves if ever necessary. The post-humans, the survivors who had spent centuries as more machine than flesh, had passed away. Their knowledge preserved, their sacrifice remembered, but the species itself had returned to its roots. Earth sent ambassadors to the Commonwealth now, participated in councils and debates, shared technology and culture. They were no longer separate, no longer watching from outside. They had finally rejoined the galactic community as equals, not as conquerors or victims, but simply as one species among many. On Earth, in a school built among the forests, a teacher stood before a class of human children. They were learning history. The teacher projected images of the reclamation, of Commander Zhang, of Dr. Sarah Chen. These were our ancestors, the teacher said. They survived the impossible. They crossed the galaxy seeking not revenge, but justice. They dismantled an empire and then walked away from power. Why do you think they did that? A young boy raised his hand. Because they remembered what it felt like to be powerless. They did not want to make others feel that way. Exactly, the teacher said. Power does not make you strong. Compassion makes you strong. Mercy makes you strong. Our ancestors learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. They paid for it with 14 billion lives. We must never forget that price. The teacher switched the image to show the Commonwealth. Thousands of worlds working together, imperfect, messy, complicated, but free. This is what they built from the ashes. Not perfect, not easy, but better. Always remember, the galaxy is not made better by those who conquer. It is made better by those who cooperate, by those who remember, by those who choose to break cycles of violence instead of continuing them. The children listened, learned, remembered, and when class ended, they ran outside to play in forests that their great-great-great-grandparents had planted, under skies that had been cleaned by generations of hard work, on a world that had died and been reborn. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, similar lessons were taught. The story of humanity's near extinction and resurrection had become legend. A story told to children as a warning and an inspiration, a reminder that even the darkest moments could lead to new beginnings if people chose to learn rather than repeat. The empire was gone, its weapons dismantled, its monuments transformed into memorials, its history preserved as a warning, and in its place something new had grown. Not perfect, never perfect, but striving, always striving to be better than what came before. On a world near the edge of Commonwealth space, an old Valanthi woman sat with her grandchildren. She had been born in the final days of the Empire, had lived through its collapse, had watched the Commonwealth rise from the chaos. Tell us about the humans, grandmother, the youngest child asked. She smiled, thinking of all she had witnessed. The humans taught us something important. They taught us that strength is not about how hard you can hit, but about how much you can endure and still choose mercy. They had every reason to destroy us. Instead, they saved us from ourselves. Were they heroes? Another child asked. The grandmother considered that. They were survivors. And sometimes, survivors become heroes not by winning battles, but by refusing to become the monsters that created them. That is the hardest victory of all. She looked up at the stars, wondering if somewhere out there on a blue and green world called Earth, human grandmothers were telling similar stories to their own grandchildren. Stories of a galaxy that had learned, slowly and painfully, that cooperation was stronger than conquest. That memory was more powerful than weapons, that the best way to honor the dead was to make sure their deaths meant something. The stars shone down on a galaxy that was still learning, still struggling, still imperfect, but a galaxy that had been given a second chance by a species that had every reason to deny it. And that in the end was humanity's greatest victory. Not that they had survived, not that they had returned, not even that they had dismantled an empire, but that they had survived, returned, dismantled an empire, and then chosen to walk away, chosen to forgive, chosen to hope. chosen to believe that others could learn and change and grow. That choice, more than any weapon or technology, had transformed the galaxy, and would continue to transform it for generations to come. The stars shone. Life continued, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, the memory of 14 billion voices whispered a truth that would echo through eternity. From the ashes of extinction, hope can grow. From the ruins of empire, freedom can bloom, and from the depths of despair, mercy can emerge. Not because it is easy, not because it is deserved, but because it is right. And sometimes being right is the only thing that matters.